Here is an example. In this figure we see how the evolution of custom duties went between 1992 and 2009, where you see, you clearly see in the green curve that the Mediterranean economies considerably open up. The mean custom duties on industrial goods, which were applied by the Mediterranean, considerably dropped during this period. Actually, it even dropped more than in other developing regions. Let's say, for example, compared to Latin America or compared to South Asian economies, we see that Mediterranean countries opened up more. So the only region in which mean tariffs were lower than the Mediterranean was Europe. We can also see this on a country basis, where we see that custom duties on capital goods, on consumer goods, on intermediate goods considerably decreased in Mediterranean economies of the south. So what we basically want to say by that is that opening up did occur since the Barcelona process in the Mediterranean region. Now, what did this opening up bring to these economies? Well, first of all, we see that trade openness, as you can see in figure 1 on the bottom left, trade openness is basically the ratio of export plus imports divided by the country's GDP. So we see that trade openness increased in the Mediterranean of roughly 20 percentage points in the last 15 years. Services trade also increased, though not as much, and FDI started to pick up, especially during the middle of the previous decade, but not as much as in other developing regions. All this effort of openness, of liberalization in the Mediterranean, until 2009, when the international crisis erupted, brought convergence, brought considerable rates of growth. So as you can see, until May 2008, the Mediterranean partners had a rate of growth that was consistently close to 5% and above the world rate of growth. Even during the 2009 crisis, the Mediterranean economies were relatively resilient and they grew faster than the rest of the world. During this period, per capita GDP had also grown, and it even doubled in some Mediterranean economies, but as we will later see, this would mask important inequalities in the distribution of income in the south. So all in all, there was a significant openness in trade, there was some increased capital attraction and reforms, which helped integrate the region into the world economy and which acted as a stimulus to growth in the south. However, there were important limitations to this model of growth. A model of growth that we qualify in the economic literature as an authoritarian bargain one, where basically you had a model of growth that was a rent-seeking one, a non-productive one, and which had important deficiencies, both from a social and from an economic perspective. So basically, instead of having complete modernization of economies, instead of absorbing the benefits of openness, we see that growth was, in most of the cases, with some exceptions as always, a non-productive growth model. And from a social perspective, it had very limited job creation. It had a low participation of the youth and women in the growth process and the development of inequalities. So basically, it was what we call a non-inclusive growth model, since young people would not participate in the formal market, and most of them would work in the informal market with work conditions that were below what one would find in the formal market. It was very little sensitive to any upgrading. Production of new comparative advantages did not really occur. There was no, let's say that this growth model did not allow for new sectors that could be potential growth carriers in the future to emerge, and most importantly, did not allow for new jobs to be fostered. It was also unfavorable to trade balances. This was in part due to the fault of the South Mediterranean partners, but it was also because of the trade relations that they had to Europe. The trade balance of the South Mediterranean has been largely in deficit since 1995, and this deficit has escalated because mainly Europe has been exporting more to the South Mediterranean than the South Mediterranean has been exporting to Europe. It was previously mentioned by the Secretary General of the PAM. South-South trade was very, very limited during this time, so the intra-Mediterranean market developed very, very little. Up till the 2009 crisis, the trade deficit would not seem to be such an issue, because it was partly compensated by tourism flows, which were considerable in the South Mediterranean, by remittances of migrants, and by some capital inputs.